This is the Weather Lounge here at WeatherWorks.
Hello, everyone, and welcome back to the Weather Lounge, your favorite go-to podcast about, yep, you guessed it, weather. And joining me here on the podcast, as always, is my co-host and fellow meteorologist here at WeatherWorks, Mike Mahalik. Hey there, Mike.
Hey, Brad. Good to be here once again, as usual.
Yeah. So we're schlepping on through this summer. It's been kind of murky the last few weeks. This pattern just doesn't want to go anywhere. So
who uses the word schlepping anyway?
I don't know. It was just something I.
That's a new one.
Yeah,
well, I've heard it before, but
slog through the early part of this
summer. That's a
summer.
better word. Slog through. Especially when you're blinded by Canadian wildfire smoke.
Yeah, how about
You're slogging through the summer. That's for
hopefully
sure.
We'll kick this upper level low pattern we've been dealing with here for the last couple of weeks as we get deeper into summer. But Mike, weather impacts just about every facet of life, around the globe, and now with the internet and social media, impactful weather events are rarely missed. But it always wasn't like this.
Right. I mean, the weather community has grown so much over the last, I'd say, 20 to 25 years. But I guess the big question is, what is the weather community? What do we mean when we say the weather community? The first thing that comes to my mind is like forums, websites. So today that'll be our focus. And who better to discuss the topic than one of our forecasting experts here at WeatherWorks, and that is Steve Coppertino. And I think you have a little more information on Steve and why we're talking with him.
Yeah, I mean, he doesn't just, work here at WeatherWorks. He's one of the founders of the popular website 33 and Rain. So we're going to talk about that, and we're going to talk about the weather forums. It's an interesting topic, and one that we kind of just came up with the last few weeks, and something I think we have to pay a little gratitude to, because we use it a lot.
I mean, the weather community, those forums are really great, and it's not just about getting observations from people. It's also even learning, seeing analysis ways, and it's like a big, like you said, community that meteorologists and even non-meteorologists can get on and just learn a little bit about how the weather works.
Yeah, and you build relationships even through these forums too, which is another thing. I mean, it's something that we need in a day-to-day basis, especially when we get into some of these higher impact weather events, especially here on the East Coast, the I-95 corridor. Of course, it's a hot spot in the summer for flooding and severe weather, and then of course around the wintertime we deal with the nor'easters and things like that. So,
well, before we get ahead of ourselves, Brad, let's not get too much into the weather forums and communities. Let's take a quick break. And then after that, we'll have Steve Coppertino with us to talk all about the weather community.
Hey everybody, well, how many times have you been burned by a weather forecast? Well, probably a few, and it might have cost your business thousands. WeatherWorks is different. We have over 30 meteorologists to give you forecasts, notifications, and weather advice 24/7. Now that could certainly help when it comes down to making those crucial decisions, but there are even more products than that in which WeatherWorks offers, from weather data to historical reports. Call us at 908-850-8600 or visit us on the web at weatherworksinc.com. And don't forget, when you think weather, think WeatherWorks.
All right, well, welcome back to the Weather Lounge, and it's time to talk about the weather community and weather forums and weather websites and all the stuff that weather weenies like to look at, right, Brad?
Yeah, that's a good way to describe it. And we're all the same.
And I don't mean that in any other way. I mean, we're all weather weenies here at the Weather Lounge, from myself, Brad, to our producer, Mike, and whoever we have on from our company. We're all weather weenies, that's for sure. But without further ado, I think we should bring on one of our experts, our expert forecasters, Steve Coppertino. Steve, how are you?
Good. Thanks, guys, for having me. It's great to be here. Also a fellow weenie.
Yeah, as you can see, Steve, we like to have fun here. We're not just We're not just stale and talking about.
No, it's a fun podcast about weather.
Right, but Steve, we brought you on because I'm pretty sure we consider you one of the forum experts in the weather community. So why don't we give a little background of yourself and how you got into the weather forums?
Yeah, sure. So, I mean, I've been interested in weather ever since, I was like 5 years old. Followed it all throughout high school, etc. Went to school at Millersville. Graduated back in late 2017.
Yeah, fellow Marauder.
Yeah, that's right. That's
I
right.
graduated back in 1990. Never mind. Got all
Yeah,
soft there.
1990 what, Brian?
What? I don't know. Go ahead, keep going.
Yeah, I was actually very close to going to Millersville myself. So a great school if you're going to learn about the weather. I went to Penn State, of course, Penn
Yeah.
State's better,
You know,
right?
I was actually the opposite, Mike. Not to chime in here with Steve introducing himself. I actually got accepted to Penn State, but they weren't going to let me go to main campus till I was a junior. So my parents were like, "Nah, why don't you go somewhere where we can go all 4 years?" And then Millersville was the only other one that was in state. So
Well, you got to pay your dues sometimes.
nothing wrong with Penn State. I know. I would have loved to go to Penn State too, but
I
having a good
mean,
time
even
at
I
Millersville.
was, I was considering Penn State for a while too, but yeah, wound up there. Great school.
Well, either way, Millersville's great school. But Steve, the big question is, how did you get into the weather forums?
So yeah, that is a great question. So, like I said, I was always interested in weather. Ever since I was young, I grew up watching the Weather Channel.
Sounds familiar.
Yeah, yeah.
About everyone.
Just trying to consume as much information as possible, reading books, just really obsessed with it. And it was during the really, really active hurricane season of 2005. Of course, everyone knows that Katrina, Rita, Wilma, etc.
Yeah, just a couple of nasty storms in there.
Yeah,
Yeah,
Florida. That
Um,
was a hot spot that year.
it was it was something else. But there was a great I guess we'll call it a weather board back then on Dr. Jeff Masters, Weather Underground. He had a great page there, and I found it out, and there was a bunch of members there who would just post all this information, like satellite imagery and all this stuff. I rarely ever got to see, and there was also a bunch of great meteorologists there, and just the whole concept of being
And hobbyists too.
yeah,
I
yeah,
mean,
yeah. No,
it was a nice mix of both meteorologists and just and good hobbyists, not just your run of the mill. Look at this model, ha ha ha. I mean, there was some good information on there.
no, really, really solid information. I mean, whether you're a meteorologist or an enthusiast or a hobbyist or even a weenie, I mean, there was just a ton of great content there. And after that, like that became one of my main resources, just asking questions and posting. It became pretty much addicting.
And I think that's what's important, and what we mentioned in the introduction a little bit to the podcast is that some of these weather forums are so informative to meteorologists building up their knowledge. They're so important to get some experience and analysis too. So it's not just a bunch of people on there saying, "Oh my God, it's snowing the hardest I've ever seen in my life," which happens a lot. It does. But I think every year it's been snowing harder than ever in their life. But anyway, that's just what happens sometimes. But anyway,
It's puking snow.
yeah, exactly. Yeah, I mean, great resource to learn about the weather, learn how to analyze the current pattern and how that's going to evolve into the future. And I really am an advocate for them. I think that any young up and coming or um, somebody who wants to be a meteorologist should get on those boards and just learn as much as you can.
Right, exactly. And that eventually transitioned. I mean, there were boards before that. One of the great ones that I was a little too young for, but had heard great things was the Right Weather board.
Yeah, that was like one of the first ones. That was kind of like the kickstart of internet weather and forums and stuff like that.
Exactly. Yeah. And as I got older, I kind of transitioned. I found the AccuWeather forums, which sadly is no longer around. But then there was also the Eastern U.S. weather forums, which eventually became American weather. But that one was extremely focused more so on the side of snowstorms. And I actually joined that during the insane winter of 09, 010, which, I mean, there's a bit of a pattern here joining during crazy times. But I mean, we got absolutely hammered during that year. And it was just, I really hadn't gotten too much into the whole tracking evolution of snowstorms, and obviously it's extremely complex. But I mean, being able to track something from 10 days out, or just the general pattern evolution, to like actually getting a storm to track, and having it work out and everyone getting crushed, was just, it was something else. To be able to share that kind of enthusiasm with a group of people was just it was really special, really special.
Was 0910 the Snowmageddon year in Maryland?
Yes. Yes. Yeah.
When they had
Yeah.
like
That was.
two monster 2 feet 2 foot plus
Yeah.
storms back to back almost.
Yeah. That would have been a great time to be at Millersville too. I mean, they got absolutely demolished down there.
Oh, did they get that much down there?
Yeah. Yeah.
Oh
It was
wow.
whole Mason Dixon was lit up with snow, and then yeah. I mean, there was one of the storms. I think I live in northern New Jersey, so I just had like hazy overcast, and portions of southern Jersey were getting 2 feet of snow. So a lot of interesting memories from that winter. And then obviously the next one we had 10, 11, with arguably one of my favorite weather moments that I can remember was tracking the Boxing Day blizzard,
Oh right.
about 10 days out, and then losing it about 5, 6 days out. And
Yeah.
then Christmas Eve, all the models shifted west, and it was just, it, it was just insane.
You mean that kind of stuff happened 10, 15 years ago with the models too?
Oh yeah.
Listen, that storm, funny story behind it. That storm, there was quite a, two of our meteorologists here at WeatherWorks had differing opinions on it, and they were going back and forth on it. I think they were forecasting for the New York City area. And man, one was adamant that it was going to happen, even though it went off the models. One was adamant. And then another forecaster was saying that, oh, I don't think it's going to happen. It's going to pass too far out to sea. And then the one who was adamant about it happening ended up being right. And there was certainly a little friendly butting heads going on there.
Yep, yep.
Um, but the thing I remember about that storm is that the storm was lost and it was all gone. And I thought it was going to be a beautiful Christmas holiday. And then I got a
Mike, you
call.
have to work.
Yeah, I got a call. I,
Yeah, I think you told me this story.
yeah, I don't know if it was on Christmas Eve or Christmas Day or something like that, but either way, one of our most senior meteorologists here, Kevin Hopler, he's now the vice president of marketing and sales um, at the company here at WeatherWorks. He gave me a call and he was just, Mike, Merry Christmas. And I was just like, okay, like, what's the joke? Why are
Why are
you
you calling
calling
me?
me? And I said, the storm is back, isn't it? And he goes, absolutely every bit of it. And I was like, oh, okay, here we go. So, yeah, that was a fond Christmas memory in the weather industry, I suppose, for me.
See now I
A little
missed out on
sarcasm there.
all those winter forums. I was living down south, and we'll get back to Dr. Masters' Wonder Blog here in a little while. But I mean, I remember watching those storms from afar. I mean, I was originally from New Jersey, and I ended up down in Charleston for 15 years or so. But I remember watching these storms, and I was like, oh my god. I talked to my parents, of course, they were still up here, and I just and the forums again, they were just starting to come along, and I was just reading on a I can't remember which one I was reading, but that might have been the flip flopper storm. Yeah, even the Weather Service, they couldn't make heads or tails of either with it, and everyone, every outlet, the news, everything you'd watch, and they were all just like, the storm is back. It's not here, and then it's back. And so I mean, it's just it was amazing to watch from a distance. Now again, I'm in the thick of it, every winter, and it's just different.
Yeah, and like Steve said, certainly enthusiastic people on there. When you have people on those forums waiting for the 0Z runs to come out
I'm
at
staying up till 2 a.m. so I can see the
right.
0Z Euro.
I got to see what the Euro's doing. That's some dedication
Yeah.
there, and it's certainly interesting. Now, funny story though, I was really late to the game with the forums. I went to school, I graduated in 2003. So I really didn't know much about the forums until, well, I got my first taste of it in '07, '08. I took a online forecasting course from Penn State, and that kept me sharp. But we had a forum-like atmosphere there, where there would be somebody who was the lead briefer, and then everybody would comment on what they're seeing. So it was kind of like forum-esque, is how some of those classes were run, which was really cool. And then I got to WeatherWorks and they said, "Oh, you gotta get on Eastern U.S. weather. They talk all about what's going on. Gives us a lot of observations too." I was like, "Oh my God, I never knew this even existed." But Steve, back to you. You developed a forum, or at least a group of people, all on your own. Is that correct?
I mean, it wasn't exactly all by myself. There was several great people involved, about 5 or 6 people. I mean, we all had the same idea. I mean, the other forums were great, but we just kind of wanted to take a different approach.
And
Um,
what do you mean by that different approach? What did you see that you wanted different in your platform?
Sure, sure. So, I mean, sometimes, with weenies, they can get a little bit out of control, and it can be a little bit intimidating for new people sometimes to come in and really
Especially if you
interact.
disagree with somebody.
Exactly.
You're on an island by yourself.
Exactly, exactly. And you really want some of those differing opinions sometimes because sometimes they wind up being correct. So we just wanted a space where everyone can contribute and just kind of have no fear of being judged and just moderate it as we wanted to and just have a nice place for off topic discussions as well. Like if you wanted to talk about sports or whatever, just have a nice section for that so that didn't spill over into some of the content. And we actually used to have live shows as well. We would break down some of
Really?
the model runs coming in. Yeah, it was a great time. It was a great time, and yeah, that continued. That would say that started up late 2016 or so, mid late 2016, and yeah, we're still going, still going.
I still love the title though. I mean, the title is awesome.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, obviously, we know it's not
It's the most
the
frustrating four
yeah,
words or 5 words in the English language if you love snow in the winter.
yep, yep. That cold rain, and you're just so close. But
33 and rain.
yep,
That's,
yep.
oh man, that's tough to take.
No, it certainly is. I mean, a lot of people get upset about that, but it's also good to see, like Brad said, but earlier, that when people are on the fringe or like not even in the region and they're still tracking and then like almost living vicariously through everyone's.
Yeah, no, you're right. Through the forums, they live through the forums. That's getting snow or getting the worst of some kind of system.
If you can appreciate like the meteorology and the tracking and like just how cool like some of the events are, like w- I believe it was Nemo in 2013 or something like that, the death band over Connecticut. Like, I mean, obviously I was way outside of that, but seeing 4 or 5 inch an hour rates was just absolutely crazy to witness.
Yeah, me personally, I worked that storm, and yeah, honestly, I would say it was more of an easier one because you knew everybody was getting hammered.
Yeah, no, I
I think a lot of times it's tougher when you have those mixed events and you're not sure where that mixing line's going to end up. If it stays all snow, it's going to be 8 plus. If it mixes, then it's going to be 3. And
right.
that
It's
makes a big difference to our clients here at
yeah.
WeatherWorks.
Where's that 32 in snow line and where's that 33
Right,
rain line? Is it
right.
shifting through the night? Is it moving north? Is it moving south? Is it going one way or the other? Precip type.
So when you have all snow and you know everybody's going to get 12 to 24 at least, it's like, okay, let's just time out the heaviest of this thing, and you know, yeah, you might be a little bit off on where the heaviest snow band sets up, but
In general,
you're still
right,
getting over a foot of snow,
right.
and you're just not getting the 2 feet. So when it's all snow like that, it's not too bad. But I remember that specifically, and I believe I got a 6 inch an hour rate observation out of Tolland County in Connecticut, and that when I saw that, I was quite blown away because outside of lake effect snowband, I don't know if I've seen 6 inch an hour rates.
Yeah. You experienced what, 3 to 4 that one storm down where you are in Lehigh Valley.
Yeah, 4 inches an hour. I think that was in the 2016 storm.
Yeah, yeah.
Yep, 4 inches an hour for 2 hours straight. And I thought that was the heaviest snow. That is the heaviest snow I've ever seen. I don't know.
Yeah.
Steve, have you seen heavier?
I mean, no, I was down in Millersville for that one as well. That was easily the heaviest snow I've ever seen. My roommate and I actually were out. I would think it was like 2 o'clock in the morning, just walking outside, and there was we actually. I'll never forget it. We were actually just walking, like it was probably knee deep by that time,
Nice.
with some of the blowing, and we just saw this bright flash, and we were just freaking out. Like we finally got the thunder snow, and it was crazy. I think classes were canceled for about a week after that. It was special, and just another funny story about that storm. One of our other employees, Kyle, was actually tracking that storm way back in the day. Um,
Yeah, Kyle Leahy, our one of our long range experts.
Yeah.
Yeah.
yep,
He was on just a couple weeks ago, yeah, with me for the summer outlook and tropical outlook.
yeah, that's right, that's right. And yeah, I remember tracking it with him, and even back when I'm assuming he was still in his early mid-teens, incredibly knowledgeable, and obviously he's become a great meteorologist today. But yeah, it's just like we were saying before, like you meet these people, and I've met a lot of connections, and they still hold up today, 10 years or so later. So
Yeah, that's a feeling that I have still not experienced when I get the thunder snow. I have not seen
really.
thunder snow in particular. It was a mix one time. I forget what storm it was, but I remember it was sleeting.
Yeah, I would
Uh,
say it's probably easier to get thunder snow and sleet, or
Yeah, it
thunder
was
Yeah.
and sleet.
sleeting
Yeah.
really heavily, and there was snow just to the west, but at the Hackettstown office, it was sleeting, of course, because that's what happens in Hackettstown. We never get hit with the hardest stuff,
Yep.
but yeah, it was sleeting, and then the sleet was getting bigger, so we didn't know if it was quite sleet or quite hail because it was getting up to like pea size and it's some of the pellets, and it was very interesting situation. But there was thunder sleet in that, so I guess that's the best I can do. For some reason, in the 4 inch an hour rate in 2016, there was no thunder snow, and I thought for sure this is it. Like I'm watching the radar and I'm watching these 40 dBz returns over me, and that's on the radar, and I was just like, this is the time. This is when it's going to happen. And I'm sitting there patiently for 2 hours and just nothing. And I was very upset, even though I got 30 inches. Uh, Still upset that I didn't get the thunder snow to happen.
Well, Steve, let's reminisce here again a little bit. Let's go back to Dr. Masters, because I think that's kind of like the elephant in the room when it comes to forums, and that was the big one. Granted, there were a few others that we mentioned, but I think that was the big one. Now, this one wasn't as much focused on the winter. Now, I don't even know if I ever went on there during the winter. It was basically all tropics.
Oh yeah, yeah. In the winter, it was just basically how's the next hurricane season gonna
Right,
look.
and I mean it was again, now you get into the very knowledgeable folks that were on there, whether they're meteorologists or not, and there was a good mix. One name that kind of, I think everyone to this day now, especially even if you're not a meteorologist, Levi Cowan. He was one of
Yep.
the first ones to do videos on Dr. Masters' blog. I think Dr. Masters did a few, but I guess he brought in Levi somewhere along the line. And, he would do a video a day, and you would think, who is this guy? I think at the time he was only in college. No, he wasn't even in college. You're right.
Yeah, I think he was younger than that.
Then he went to Florida State, I think. Yeah, and I just remember watching his videos. This guy knows everything. I mean, he's like pulling out things that you don't even would think that would maybe send the storm one way or the other. He's like, "We have to watch this," and then how it interacts with the shear near the Caribbean, and I learned so much from Dr. Masters' blog on trop. Now, when I got my degree, I only had to take one semester of tropical meteorology, and that was again at Millersville. How much tropical could you learn living in the Northeast? Granted, we had storms here and there, but down on that blog, I mean, on that forum, I just learned so much new stuff. And especially at the time I was living down in the Southeast, I had to go through a lot of storms actually. Gustav, I think, was the first. Gaston. Gaston was the first one I remember forecasting for on the air. And that was a doozy. It was right off the coast of South Carolina. But again, just on that forum, and and the funny thing is, you and I were talking, a while back, and my handle was Trucktown, and
Yep.
you remember seeing that, and yours was, I forget.
It was Storm Chaser 2007.
Right,
Bit
and
of
I
a,
do
yeah,
remember
I
seeing
was
that
young
one.
back then,
Yeah,
so
yeah,
you
I
gotta.
agree. But we talked about names and handles that we both recognized. Like, oh my god, I remember that. I remember this one. So it was just and I was the same way. As soon as I started my shift, I'd be on there checking things out, reading things, and it was just very informative.
Yeah, no, and to your point, I mean, like Levi was a teen back then, and it's just another example of someone
And he lived in
sticking with it.
Alaska, I think.
Yeah, he got his DAC. He moved to Alaska. Or I think he might have originally been in Alaska, but
Right.
then
That's what it was. Yeah.
yeah, he went to school. He wound up getting his doctorate, and now I believe he actually works for the Joint Typhoon Warning Center. So you really talk about sticking with what you love. I mean, that it's just incredible. It's
Is
incredible.
that the same guy that developed Tropical Tidbits?
Yep.
Yeah, exactly. Yep,
Yep.
Tropical Tidbits.
Yeah,
That
that's a great
obviously.
site for viewing
Yeah.
models. That's for sure.
Yeah. I mean, it's like the go-to site for most
And
people. I
it's
mean,
free. So
but
yeah,
a
it's
free site other than some of the others that you have to pay for. But
I don't know. Our model site here in house at WeatherWorks is
it
getting
is.
pretty darn good.
It's gaining traction very, very quickly.
Yeah, no, I'm liking some of the new variables that we're throwing in there. It's great.
might have to make it a little bit public soon. We'll see.
Ooh, maybe we'll have to talk to the software guys about that one.
Oh yeah, yeah.
The other thing, Steve, is when they announced that they weren't going to do that forum anymore, there were so many upset people, and they tried to bring it to other places, and it just never caught on.
Yeah, yeah. It just unfortunately it wasn't the same. I mean, unfortunately all good things come to an end,
Yeah,
but
yeah.
I just have so many great memories about that place.
Oh
Just
yeah.
tracking things and
Yep.
all the stuff I learned that I would have never picked up. I mean, the obviously the National Hurricane Center discussions are far more in depth than they used to be, but during the early 2000s, it was you were seeing stuff that wasn't even mentioned by professionals, which was just really, really cool to see.
So what do you think's now changed, Steve? Now, as we move forward, and we're over the last couple of years. I mean, the volume and how the content is consumed nowadays. What's changed with that?
Um, yeah, so that's an interesting question. I mean, with Twitter, obviously Twitter's been around for a while, but it just seems like the whole Twitter mindset of just putting out content and kind of getting likes from it and gaining that kind of traction has been sort of the shift, and just getting like instantaneous info, instead of like actual having like discussions and debating about things. It's just like here's this thing, and I mean, the content on most Twitter accounts is pretty solid, but you do get some interesting takes out there, and it's a bit of an interesting shift. I mean, there's some great stuff, especially in tropical and snow stuff, but I've seen quite a few people gravitate more towards the instant gratification and the posts like that.
Right. Yeah,
Um,
I would like to not see as many clown maps come out.
yeah,
No, that's
exactly,
true.
exactly.
We spent some time on the podcast talking about that too before.
Yeah.
It's
What
just
I mean by clown maps is the raw snowfall output from weather modeling, and a lot of times that gets shared around, and then everybody grabs onto it, and then everybody calls in saying, "Oh my God, we're going to get 3 feet of snow." When in reality, there's one model, one run showing 3 feet of snow, while the other ones don't even have a storm.
270 hours away, and
Yep.
Right.
Using the Kushera method, which
Right,
is
which
yeah.
boosts your snow output as much as possible. So everybody right now is going to be like, "Oh, I gotta do Kushera because I want to see, no, I want to see what it can really do." No,
well, yeah, or the summertime. You get the one model that shows an 880
oh,
880 millibar low in the Gulf of Mexico, and oh, look at this, this is going to be an all-time doozy, and
Yeah,
it's
and
what is it like the 3K Nam? Yeah,
yeah, which
um,
doesn't handle. Yeah, it'll just infinitely deep into low pressure, and then you have someone trying to explain that, but it gets drowned out
right, because there
by
is a reason it does that,
yeah,
and people, you gotta do some investigating there. There's a reason why models do what they do, and obviously the 3K Nam deepening something to 888 millibars or something stupid uh,
yeah,
is not
yeah.
something to be keying on.
Obviously, and on social media, like there's no moderation for weather content. So yeah,
Sure,
whatever
absolutely.
whatever someone wants to share can get shared, and that's where the value of the forums still comes in. I mean, you'll have people make points about that. You'll have moderators step in and be like, hey, like come on, like
that's the big thing. Yeah,
disingenuous, to be kind of sharing something like this, or like a 384-hour GFS map, like it's things that weather enthusiasts and people alike know, but the general public certainly doesn't.
right. And the nice thing I see a lot more on forums versus like what you see on Twitter or Facebook. Of course, you get those one-run maps that are going to show the worst case scenario. I see more on forums though. You see more of the ensemble models. You see
Exactly.
more of the here's the trend, what we're looking at. Here's the differences between this model run and this model run. Not this is going to probably going to happen versus it. I mean, it's a slow hands-on approach, like you said, versus like, oh, the worst case scenario, we're going to throw this out there on social media right now because I want to be, like you said, an instant gratitude.
Yeah. Yeah.
There's more
Exactly.
whys on the forum. Okay, why is the storm tracking the way it's tracking? Well, there's a short wave at 500 millibars coming through and meeting up with another and phasing here, whereas the other model phases sooner, and that's why it rips up the coast. And it's stuff that you can learn through these forums on how to analyze things, and that's really a great tool. So yeah, avoid those clown maps is all I gotta say. Just don't.
Yep. At all costs. At
You
all
know,
costs.
I don't think we really put one out here at WeatherWorks unless we're really confident that it's representative of what we feel the storm will do.
Yeah. Yeah.
So,
I mean, even within a day, you can still see some ridiculous stuff. But
ugh,
if you know what you're
And you
doing, you
get
can.
good observations on there too. Most of the observations are usually pretty good. They're not going to be, off the wall. I mean, you're not going to
Yeah.
get, or you're going to
Exactly.
get a lot of 5 or 6 inch amount reports, and all of a sudden someone says, "Well, I got 12 inches of snow because I'm one upping you by times six." But and then that this is that's not right.
yeah, that does happen sometimes. Have you seen that happen on your forums there, Steve?
I no, not on ours. I used to see it back in the day. There were some roller tilters, putting it at angles,
Slant sticking, we like to
yeah,
call it.
yeah, making a little snow drift and then
Yeah,
sticking it in that. So I
or
mean,
And
but no,
cutting off the bottom 3 inches of a ruler, then
yeah,
you put it in. Like, oh, look at this! I got eight,
yeah,
9 inches.
exactly. So yeah,
there's certainly a slant sticker that does observations near where I live in the Lehigh Valley in Pennsylvania, and he's probably about less than 2 miles away, and always is way more than what I'm getting, and I don't even understand how it's possible because I'm on a hill and I should be seeing more than whatever that guy's seeing, and Yeah, I don't get it. I don't know what the motivation is there.
I don't either. I mean, it's not like getting a prize if you get the most snow or something.
But the
It's like,
problem is I see it always shown on like a public information report on
oh
the
yeah,
National
that's
Weather
true.
Service,
Yeah, yeah,
and
yeah.
then people right away latch on to that and say, "Oh, well, there was 24 inches." Well, I gotta tell you, I didn't measure anything more than 18. And
I just think sometimes people, again, like want that like kind of gratification and getting like recognized for having that number, even
right,
though it's just wrong. I mean, I
yeah,
think there was a instance just this winter in the lower Hudson Valley of like a 30-inch report in 24 hours that was just wrong. Um, and obviously we were able to weed that out when we're doing our CSTs, because we have our meteorologists who know better, and we've taken so many observations and just our analysis of things.
and that's why we do the certified snowfall totals,
Quality
because
control, all that good stuff.
we weed out, like you said, Steve, all of that bad information and make sure we're giving the most representative amount. So obviously, the guy who's a mile and a half from me is giving out bad information. There's no way. Uh, I think just the storm recently. Um, oh, what year was the storm where it just kept snowing and snowing and snowing in eastern Pennsylvania?
2021, I
2021,
believe.
yes.
Yeah.
Um, and the observations were coming out at like 36 inches and stuff like that. Well, I got to tell you, I couldn't find much more than 2 feet. And I know I was in the heaviest snow the entire time. So now I deal with a lot of drifting, and that was tough to try to figure out. But yeah, I mean that's the kind of stuff you have to look at that and say, okay, that might not be correct. It might be just some guy who's just measuring a snowdrift trying to one up everybody else. So certified snowfall totals take care of that. Get rid of that information so you're actually getting a true amount, rather than something that's been inflated or even something that's been underestimated.
Yeah, exactly.
But yeah, I mean, there has been issues with upmanship and stuff like that. I do feel some of the intimidation issues sometimes too, Steve. I don't know how much you've run into that, but just you're inexperienced and you want to ask a question, but you don't want to be made fun of for not knowing.
Yes.
So I feel that at times. I know I felt that when I first started at WeatherWorks, and I was like, should I say something on these boards? Should I not? So I don't know if that's something that, in your forums you try to correct or weed out.
Oh yeah, yeah, certainly. I mean, I think we've all been there. Anyone who's a weather enthusiast or meteorologist or whatever,
Still
hobbyist.
there sometimes. I don't claim to
Yeah.
know everything. Are you kidding?
No, no.
Um,
I mean,
Learn something
we're
new every
always
year.
learning. Yeah, exactly. No, I mean, if someone has a question, they deserve the right to get a fair answer, and without being judged. We're like you said, we're constantly learning, and some you never know. Like we don't have people's ages or whatever in their profile. It's just they could be a younger kid who's interested in it. So we don't want to turn them away or scare them away. Just kind of want to provide them with that information and just really have a nice environment for discussions.
It could be like me when I was like 10 years old and not understanding why my snow changed to sleet and freezing rain at
Exactly,
19
yeah.
degrees.
No, you're right, Mike. Because back then, our only outlets were the radio, what we'd read on in newspapers, or the Weather Channel, or the TV, or something, or like the local newscasts and local weather. I mean, there was no place to go and say, or look up on the internet and say, oh, well, I want to learn about this. I mean, it was basically whatever books are out there, and that's it. I mean,
Yeah. I mean, personally for me, I think it was Valentine's Day 2007. I was on the AccuWeather forums, and I know we were supposed to get a pretty good amount of snow progged a couple days out, but obviously that turned into a giant sleet fest and like freezing rain fest. And, I kind of wanted to know why. And just,
well, why is it freezing rain at 22 degrees? It's 10
yeah,
degrees below
exactly.
freezing. No, I know what you're saying, because those are the things I wondered. I didn't know the answers to until I learned, what the vertical atmosphere looks like.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, when you're younger, you just think, oh, it's, below freezing, it can
Yeah.
snow. But obviously, there's so much more to it. And having people explain that, and, I'm a visual learner. So seeing like those diagrams and those plots and like people explaining them was just, invaluable.
Yeah.
Right. And you bring up the Valentine's Day storm. That was, I think, a year. Was that 2007, right? Is that
Yeah,
right?
yeah,
That was a
yeah.
year before I started at WeatherWorks in 2008. And at the
Jeez, Mike,
time,
you're old.
I know.
Oh, jeez.
Yeah, I'm at WeatherWorks 15 years now. So anyway, so that was the year before I started at WeatherWorks, and I was still working in the landscape lawn care industry, and I was plowing snow, and I was getting so frustrated trying to plow these lots and keep them open with the sleet because the sleet was coming down so hard, and it's very difficult to plow sleet. It gets really heavy. It falls off your plows. It also doesn't respond to salt
Salt, all right.
very well. It's just harder to melt off. So there's all kinds of problems with sleet.
Yeah, it's hard to melt off balls of ice that are falling from
Yeah,
the
and I
sky.
was like begging it to turn to just plain old snow. I'm like, just snow, man. I can deal with it a lot easier. But yeah, I think it did change the snow at the end, but yeah, it still.
Yeah, that was a messy one.
Ah, that's for sure. But I'm glad that, with your forums there, Steve, that you try to keep the conversation open to everybody and with no judgment, because that's the way you got to learn. You have to learn. You can't demean somebody who doesn't know as much as you, but just give a fair answer, like you said.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, we even have people who work in snow removal like that just want to learn more. So,
Sure.
you come from a totally different background, you're asking questions, try and help them out. And it's just we don't want to shun anyone away just because they're not, a meteorologist and they don't claim to know everything. So it's just trying to keep it casual and informative.
So I guess one of the moves that's been seen lately is a move to Discord. And what? So what does that
Yeah, I'm
look
not all up
like?
on that.
Yeah, I don't know a whole lot about Discord. I guess that's just me being an old, you know, grumpy old man. What is that looking like, Steve?
So Discord I mean, I'm sure a lot of people don't know. It's relatively new. It's basically it's used a lot for people who like to play games and stuff like that. It's a interactive environment where you can have like voice conversations, but there's also like really great chat features. So what we wanted to do to kind of not combat, but work with the whole social media thing for um, more instantaneous posts was kind of try like a hybrid mode with Discord. So we have a bunch of threads and pages set up on there where you can still post observations and talk about long range stuff and model runs, what have you. But the thing is, we can also kind of narrow the pipeline. So if in long range, usually on a form, they're pretty long posts, they're very informative. But like let's say on an observation thread, you can just keep it going as you wish. So on that long range form, we'll narrow down like the post time to maybe like a minute. So you have time to, read what someone said, and then you can add your thoughts and really just kind of control it there. And another great thing is, I mean, like I said, there's voice calls. So if you want to hop into like a voice little lobby, you can just straight up chat with people and talk about, hey, I have snow here. Oh, I have rain here. Just trying to figure things out. It's really cool. There's some new features coming in with video stuff. So it's just even more interactive. A lot of excellent moderation tools and just really trying to keep that casual vibe. And if you do actually go to our page now, 33andrain.com, you should be prompted with a invite to join, and we'll get you all set up.
Wow.
Yeah,
Good stuff.
that's eons ahead of what the forums used to be. That's for sure. I really hope people take advantage of that, and you know, I wish some of this stuff was around, like I said, when I was 10, and just intrigued by everything, and then you can actually figure out why the weather is doing what it's doing.
You wonder though, to a point. I don't sound negative, but if you wonder if
Nah, no negativity allowed in
no,
here.
I'm just thinking as an up and coming meteorologist, or like you said, a kid these days. But maybe there's too much out there now, and it's hard to grasp onto everything. And yeah, and that's kind of what I was getting at. Is like not only to have the Twitter, the Facebook, the YouTubes now, the storm chasers, the forecasting, I mean, where do you start? Is kind of what I'm getting at. It's like you're 12 years old, and like I want to get into this now. What's my best approach?
Yeah, I mean, I could talk about that for a
Yeah,
while.
I'm
Obviously, we
sure you
don't have
can.
unlimited time here, but yeah, I mean that's where we're gonna kind of try and see, and over the next year or so, just to try and really seek out.
As opposed to 30 years ago where you had to grasp at things just to get info. Now it's like, boom, it's right there in
Yeah,
front of you.
yeah,
Everything.
information overload. So yeah, that's something that we're gonna have to see where it heads, and hopefully, people just don't get consumed by the weenie maps and
Right,
such.
right,
Well, maybe that's somewhere to start. You can kind of separate out things and have a beginners forum and a
right.
intermediate forum, an advanced forum, and then that way people get siphoned into the right area to talk. Because there's people who just don't know what do you mean by low pressure and high pressure, and why is that important?
Yeah, yeah.
There's basics out there that people need to know, before you can get into the you know deformation band and all kinds of good stuff like that associated with winter storm.
Yeah, no, it's a great point. It's definitely a process.
So, Steve, I think this talk's been great. I mean, a little reminiscing in there about the history of some big storms as
Yeah,
usual.
yeah.
As usual, it always
Yeah,
gravitates
it
back
always
to
goes
that.
that way.
I mean that's what we like. That's what we like.
Yeah, it always seems to end up that way. Let's talk about forums, but hey, we got to mention the 2016 storm. We got to
Yep.
mention this one. But Steve, I really appreciate you being on the Weather Lounge and being our guest here. Great talk. We'll have to bring you back sometime to talk about another topic.
Yeah, great info. Yeah, we'll have to revisit this. Maybe like next spring or summer for sure.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. Would be more than happy to. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, not a problem. Anytime. And that is this episode of the Weather Lounge. So remember, we'll have a new episode every 2 weeks. So come on back and find us on your favorite podcasting app. And don't forget that WeatherWorks can be found at weatherworksinc.com. That's our parent company. And just search WeatherWorks on all social media platforms, and you can find us there too. So thanks a lot, everybody, for listening, and we'll see you next time.